So I would like to welcome you here tonight to Queen's and to thank you so much for coming along to hear a little bit more about what we've been doing and what we are planning to do in the future. I wanted to start off with a quote which is by John Wesley. Do all the good you can, by all the means you can, in all the ways you can, in all the places you can, at all the times you can, to all the people you can, as long as ever you can. And if I was to sum up our strategy in one line, it would be all the good we can. I suspect if I was to leave it there, most of you would probably feel that you had been diddled out of some information, so I won't do that. I will give you a lot more information than that over the course of the evening, but that is the essence of what we believe as a community. It's my plan tonight to go through with you details about what we have been doing over the last 3 years with regards to welfare, our provision, our personnel, our financial security and our estate development, because I suspect that those are the 5 areas that you are most concerned by. And it is my intention to be as open, honest and transparent as I am able to be about all of those things. But to do that, and to give you a good starting point, I think I probably need to give you a bit of background. We are not a standalone school. Some of you may know that, some of you may not. We are part of a group of independent schools called the Methodist Independent Schools Trust. We are one of 14 schools across the country that work together collectively, sharing the same ideals, the same principles and the same ethos. We were established in 1843 and we were established at that point at Temple Methodist Church in order to allow people who were from a non-conformist background to have a good education. That was the basis under which we were founded, and we stayed in that form on our own for many years until 1909, when a group of schools across the country, Methodist schools ourselves included, decided to join together to form a group of schools together, a single charity, which had the aim of providing a Methodist education. And I've given you all, you should have a sheet, it's a smaller one than this one, but which is the principles of a Methodist education. This is a document that was written about 20 years ago. It was written for the Methodist Independent Schools Trust, but it was also written for the Methodist Church as a set of principles and ideals under which all of our education took place. So you will know that over the past 3 years, we have had a number of changes. Some of them you will have seen very obviously, some of them you will not have seen. But one of the things that I really want to talk about and really want to make clear is that in many ways, the changes that we have been doing over the last 3 years have not been radical, they've not been about moving us away from our position, but they have been about cultural realignment and bringing us back in place, back in step with the other schools within the group where we had lost our way slightly. So I'm going to go back a little bit to tell you something of what happened 4 years ago, 3.5 years ago. So in September 2015, we had an incident on the school site. And that incident, well, it's very well known by at least one of the people who are sitting in this room tonight, but that incident was that an intruder came onto the site and exposed themselves to 2 of our students who were in the 6th form. And although CCTV footage picked up that the image of the person concerned, and although the person concerned was then subsequently arrested, that single event resulted in us having an emergency inspection triggered, which happened in February of the following year, in 2016. We didn't know that was going to happen. We didn't know there was going to be a trigger of an inspection. We didn't know even about the inspection happening until 5 minutes before they walked through our front doors. And at that point, we got a phone call which said, "We're here. We won't tell you why we're here, but we're here to check your safeguarding and we're here to check that you are compliant." And we weren't. So I took over as acting head in May 2016, knowing that we were about to publish a inspection report that said that we were non-compliant in safeguarding, and knowing that we were going to have to do something about that. We're going to have to look at it, we're going to have to find out what the situation was, and we were going to have to do something about it. I was appointed head formally in the July, and my first act was to appoint a deputy head welfare who would be the designated safeguarding lead. And as I'm sure you all know, I appointed Andy Free. Andy and I, over the course of that period, and during that summer, uncovered a number of safeguarding issues that really concerned us. And we realised that we had a significant number of areas of non-compliance that we needed to address and needed to resolve. We also realised that we couldn't do it on our own and that we needed to get some expert help in order to help us do it. So we invited a number of people to come into the school in September and to do a complete review of our safeguarding processes, procedures and protocols in order to look at what we were doing. We invited a lady called Lorraine Earps, who is a consultant for MIST on safeguarding, but she is a UK renowned expert on safeguarding, to come in and to look at what we were doing and what we needed to do. She brought with us Marcus Aruga. Some of you may have heard of him, some of you may not. Marcus Aruga used to be the Assistant Director of the NSPCC. He is a researcher at Huddersfield University, and he works on ensuring that that cultures and communities have a safeguarding culture which enables young people to be protected in that environment. He's done a lot of work which has been around the Jimmy Savile case and all of the things that came as a result of that. So the two of them came and they looked at everything that we were doing, they analysed everything, they talked to us all, and they came up with a roadmap of what we should do, when we should do it, and how we should complete it. And we have followed that roadmap. One of their other suggestions was that we invite a third person in, which we did, which was a barrister called Elizabeth Prochaska. And Elizabeth was a barrister who was working at that time on the independent inquiry into child sexual offences. And she came along and did a complete root and branch review and investigated everything and pointed to a number of failings that had happened over the previous 20 years, which we needed to address. So what have we done is probably the important point from your perspective. Well, we've implemented all of the changes that were required of us. Some of them you will have seen. You know, we all walk around with lanyards now. You all have to sign in when you come onto the school site. You probably, if you ask your children, they will tell you that we talk safeguarding quite regularly, and we talk about who you go to, who you talk to, what do you do if there's an issue, all of those things. But we put every measure and every step in place that we could. We also appointed at that time, a governor whose responsibility is safeguarding, to specifically monitor and check everything that we were doing, because a lot of the things are not visible to you. A lot of the things are things like, are our employment checks right? Have we made sure that our culture is one where people couldn't come here and hide away? There is no suggestion that over that 20-year period that anything significant went astray. But what there is an acceptance from us, based upon the work of Marcus Aruga, that cultures are either those which do not allow problems to happen because people either don't come to this place to work because they know that they will be followed up, or because any behaviour that they display initially is acted upon straight away, and therefore it is either remedied or they will no longer stay in the employment of that establishment. So we appointed Janet Walden as our safeguarding governor. Janet is an extremely well-respected ex-senior civil servant who worked for the Department of Education and for the NHS, and she has a strong background in safeguarding and in ensuring that things are right. The outcome of all of that, as you will know, is that within a year, in September 2017, we were inspected again and found to be fully compliant, having met all of the targets that we were set and all of the targets that we set ourselves. But that's not good enough for us. We don't want to be compliant with safeguarding. We want to be a beacon of best practice. We want Queens to be somewhere where our young people and their parents can feel that they are safe, protected and cared for in the best possible way. So we have continued to use the resources that we have available. Caroline comes in every year and re-audits us, reassesses what we are doing, tells us where we're doing things right, tells us where we need to improve, and we do that constantly. And it was really fantastic from my perspective this year to be told for the first time, actually you are now the best school in the group in terms of safeguarding, and there are things that you are doing that nobody else has even come close to thinking about, and it's now time for you to start to take a lead within some of the discussions that are going on within the other schools, which is exactly where we want to be and where we want to keep being. Over the course of that first year in 2016 to 2017, we started to get some comments made about site security. Some of them came from people who knew about the issue that had happened in 2015. Some of them simply came from parents of junior school children who were concerned about the security of the site in general. Tracy did, as she does every few years, a questionnaire to parents, and that fed back very strongly that there was a concern over site security. That coupled with the fact that when ISI came and inspected us in September 2017, the one thing that they raised was how open our site was and how concerned they were with how open our site was. And that they said to us at that point, we will be back in 3 years for a routine inspection, September 2020. By that time, you need to sort it out site security. So we did. As you know, we've got the gates up now and all the fencing, and that has enabled us to be in a position where we can lock down the school in the event of an emergency. So if we ever had some marauding axemen on the site, we could lock down, we could make sure that all of the children were kept safe. We've still got some areas to develop where that's concerned over the course of the next year to make sure we're in exactly the place we want to be by the time September 2020 comes and ISI come knocking back on our door. So there are some areas we need to look at reception points throughout the school to make sure that works properly, and we also need to look at the gating at the side where deliveries come to make sure that those gates are not open, because there's no point having lovely gates and having them open so anyone can walk through. So that's one of the pieces of work that we will be doing over the course of the next year. We were really careful when we went about doing this to make sure that the gates stayed within keeping and were fitting for the building. We didn't just want to look like Fort Knox. So we were very careful to try and make sure that it looked as we wanted it to look, but at the same time ensuring that we were able to have the levels of security that we wanted to have. And I know that has caused some anxiety for some people who feel that the place now doesn't feel as friendly, it doesn't feel as warm, it doesn't feel as easy to get into, which in some ways I understand, but sadly, I think it is a reality of the world in which we live, and we're trying to do it in the best way that we possibly can. although much of what I'm going to talk about today is relevant to everybody, there are a couple of things that I'm going to touch upon which actually are more significant for the parents of senior school children than anyone else. I'm hoping that this actually decides to move on in a moment. So we have within the senior school this year been making planned changes to our pastoral system. It is relevant, I think, for anyone, irrespective of whether the children are seniors or not, because this is the direction of travel that we're going to. And I wanted to give you some information about what we've done, why we've done it, how we've done it, and what the rationale behind it actually is. So, if you read the second point on that sheet that I have given you about the principles of Methodist education, what it says on there is that every boy and girl, every man and woman deserves to have their educational needs met, and this requires a diversity of approaches. And we were really conscious of the fact, from talking to boys in particular who had left the school or who left in year 11, and to parents of children who were coming up into the senior school from the junior school, or parents who had just come up from the junior school, that we potentially had a problem where this was concerned. Because our pastoral system was set up, or it is currently set up in such a way that for a variety of reasons, there was a real inequality of experience between the boys and the girls. The girls entered a house where they felt nurtured and cared for, and it was warm and it was friendly, and they felt that the girls looked after each other, and it was a very positive experience for them. They had lots of trips, they had visits away, they had activities, they had all sorts of things. And the boys entered a house where they didn't feel the same thing. And we looked at a variety of ways in which we might be able to look at that, and in the end decided that actually what we needed to do was to ensure that our boys and girls were treated the same by treating them the same. And so we took the view that it is incredibly hard in a vertical system, which is what we currently have, for a head of house to be able to look after the needs and requirements of somebody in year 7 and somebody in year 11. The needs of those two people are entirely different. The problems that they encounter are entirely different. The issues that arise are completely different. If you look at year 7 girls and year 7 boys, the problems that they face are similar. If you look at year 7 girls and year 11 girls, the problems that they face are not similar. And so we made the decision that for lots of reasons, including an ability to track, monitor, both pastorally and academically, that we wanted to move to a year need system as opposed to a house system. I wanted to introduce you now to the people who are going to be the year leaders, if I can actually get this to move on. So, our head of year 7, and many of you will have already met her because she's already been doing a lot of work on transition between year 6 and year 7, which is another strength of this arrangement, allows us to have that continuity which we really wanted with the junior school, is Kay Roxon. Kay, can you just stand up and wave to anybody who doesn't already know you? Thank you. Our head of year 8 is Adrian Palmer, who some of you will already know. Our head of year 9 is Claire Harrison. I want to introduce you to our new head of year 10, who's a new member of staff who is joining us in our geography department, who is Megan Neenan. If Megan can stand up, she's kindly come tonight. And for those of you who are wondering, yes, she is related to Mark Neenan. So that's one department that's well and truly organised. Well, at least it will be from September. If I can introduce you to those of you who don't know her, but I think that's probably very few people, if I'm honest. Amanda Free, who will be our head of year 11. We've recently appointed Martin Aldridge as our head of Year 12. Martin does a lot of work in the sixth form already and does most of our work to do with UCAS applications and processes and careers. So he's a really great addition to that team. And then the person who is already our head of sixth form will be having lead responsibility for Year 13, Sharon Wild. Can't hide, Sharon. So the advantages of the system that we are moving to is that there will be a single point of contact for you. The person that you will contact in the event of you having a difficulty with your child will be one of those people. It will be the year lead. They will then work out what to do with that information, who to send it to, who's going to deal with it, but you will have one person to contact. And you'll have one person to contact whether that issue is pastoral, whether it is academic, whether it's about quality of teaching, whether it's about homework, whether it is about co-curricular experiences, whatever it's about, you'll have a single point of contact. And then they will be able to work on ensuring that you have all the information that you need. Now that doesn't mean that we are losing the houses, and I know that this has been a source of a degree of anxiety. The other reason why we made the decision that we did is that we had a problem with our house system in terms of enabling us to have good house competition. The reason for that was we have 2 girls' day houses, 2 boys' day houses, 1 girls' boarding house and 2 boys' boarding houses, which meant that we had 7 different houses that could be involved in house competition. However, if you were looking at house rugby, you really only had 2 houses that can compete, because the girls don't play and the boarders don't usually manage to put a side out. So what that meant was that there were 2 houses that could have a game. So from our perspective, when we are going through on final assembly, giving out the cup for the different events, well, there's only 1 or 2 options. So you're sort of setting up a whole group of students to not be able to be successful. This system means that every single student, whether they're a boarder or a boy or a girl or a day student, will be in 1 of 4 houses. Those houses are only for competition purposes. They are not for pastoral purposes. They are not for tracking and monitoring. They're not for us looking after them. They are simply in order for them to compete. So all of the boys and all of the girls, day and boarding, will be allocated between 4 houses. That meant that we had to change the names of the houses. And you are really the first to hear this because the students haven't heard yet what the names are, but the names are Ray, French, Woolmer and Barnacles. And you might say to me, where on earth did those names come from? And you'd be right to say that, but they are our 4 founders. Ray, French, Woolmer and Barnacles were the 4 people who stood in Temple Methodist Church in 1843 and said, we need to set up a school. So they are the names of the 4 houses. They are all men, but then again, in 1843, there weren't many women setting up schools. So it is a result of history, as a result, rather than a result of our choice. And as Mrs. Pauly said to me, I think it was Mrs. Pauly who said to me, I'm sure their wives were very instrumental in making sure that it happened. We've decided that we're going to rename the House Shield as the Founders Shield because, well, it will be really. And so that will be the competition. So we're now in the process of trying to work out exactly what events will take place in that competition and what that will look like. It is one of our intentions to move those competitions out of curriculum time and games time and move them into the weekend so that we can have parental involvement and support during those competitions, which we think would be nice, and also to enable us to move sports day onto a Saturday so that we can encourage our parents in the senior school to come along to sports day in the same way that happens in the junior school but hasn't really historically traditionally happened in the senior school. So the next thing I want to move on to, and having looked at the welfare side of things, is our provision. And I wanted to talk to you a little bit about both the curriculum and the co-curriculum. I've deliberately used the word provision because for us, the provision is not just about what happens in the classroom, it's also about what happens outside the classroom. And again, if you look at the Methodist principles, you will see that there are a number of statements which relate to this. Education should never be confined to a utilitarian purpose. It's about the acquisition of wisdom so that individuals can give a proper direction to their lives in a fast-changing world. Or education is not just about what we learn as individuals, it's also what we learn together as communities. It is about encouraging mutual respect and understanding, appreciating the importance of forgiveness, reconciliation and renewal, and respecting cultural diversity. There are so many things when you read through those principles that stand out as being, it's not just about learning maths, or it's not just about learning English, it's about so much more. So I wanted to start by talking to you about why we have decided to make some of the changes that we have made. The ISI report, when it came out in September 2017, was very clear. It was very clear that our educational provision was good. But I don't know about you, I don't want our educational provision to be good. Anyone can do good. I want us to be the best. I want our educational provision to be excellent. I want to be able to stand here and say to you, your child will do better here at Queen's than they will if they go anywhere else for their education. That's what I want to be able to say to you. So we made some decisions about how we were going to go about that. I think the first point to say is that none of the things that we've done have we done randomly. None of the things are plucked out of the thin air. And none of the things are new. You know, we're not using our students here as guinea pigs. We are using evidence-based information to enable us to go about creating a positive change. And we've done that with the support of people who have a great wealth of experience in it. So we're really fortunate to have three extremely strong governors who were able to give us information and guidance on education. The first one I wanted to mention is Rachel Davis, who is the ex-principal of a variety of further education colleges. The second person is Professor Geraint Jones, who is an ex-head and the ex-director of education for the College to Schools group, which is a group of 44 different independent schools. He's also the ex-dean of education at Buckingham University. And finally, our most recent addition, who has been really, really helping us to formulate how we go about doing things, Tony Broxham, who is sitting over there, who again is an ex-head, but he is a Department for Education regional advisor and the director of the Taunton Teaching Alliance. He has a wealth of experience in how you go about ensuring that your provision is excellent, and we've worked very closely with all of them to help us develop that. We've also appointed a new deputy head who's responsible for teaching and learning, and for those of you who haven't met him yet, it's Steve Green on the stage over there, who is your go-to person on anything regarding what goes on in terms of the educational provision within the school. So, what are we doing within the classroom? Well, we have made the decision to move from 8 38-minute lessons a day to 5 one-hour lessons a day. We've done that because it will enable us to better structure our lessons and will enable us to be able to develop our teaching and learning in the way that we want to. And there's a few myths here that I wanted to have an opportunity to discuss with you. One is that, and we've had this from a lot of parents who say, well, how can you possibly go to hour-long lessons because an hour is too long for a teenager to concentrate? And I would say, quite right, so's 38 minutes. They can do about 10. The reality is, we need to structure our lessons in such a way as to ensure that we keep them occupied, keep them interested, but cover everything that needs to be covered. So a good lesson needs to have certain things in it. A good lesson needs to make sure that we have reminded our students of what they did in the lesson before. It might be foremost in our minds as teachers, but for your average Year 8 boy who hasn't had chemistry for a week, he can't even remember what he did last night. So he's got no hope whatsoever of remembering what you were last talking about. So we need to spend a little bit of time making sure that he's actually on the same planet as you. So that's 10 minutes. We then need to have a period of probably up to 20 minutes of instruction, good old-fashioned teaching. Make no mistake, teaching doesn't happen by osmosis. People do not learn unless they are taught something new. And that's one of the things that we are really working towards. And I know that might sound obvious, but it's surprising how often it doesn't happen generally in classrooms across the country. So 20 minutes of time of learning new material, being instructed on something that is new that you've not done before. You then need a period of time in which to practice it, to have a go at it, to do something with it, about 20 minutes. And then you need 10 minutes or so at the end, just to remind them of what the lesson was about and to check what they have learned and understood. An hour. Lots of bits, but an hour in total. There are some additional advantages. One, that you're not walking around the school quite so much and losing time and wandering from one place to another. And one, that you're not carrying a bag with 8 lots of things in it. And if you've seen some of the students walk around with the bags that they've got, you would have some of the concerns that I've had over time about it. So we've changed the length of our lessons, which means we're having to rethink how we go about delivering things. But we absolutely believe it is the way to ensure that we have the best possible quality teaching and learning going on in our lessons. But that wasn't the only issue. The other issue was we had a very long lunch hour. We have at the moment. It's longer than an hour, so a very long lunch break. And then co-curricular activities both at lunch and after school. The co-curricular activities that we had at lunch are squeezed. If you do music, which is when most of the music co-curricular happens at lunchtime, if you have music co-curricular in the co-curricular lunchtime slot, you have to compete with getting your lunch, getting your music done, and going to any of the drop-in sessions that we might have to help in supporting students who are finding a particular subject difficult. And it's really difficult for somebody to actually manage to get to all of those different things if they want to. But on top of that, we had an additional issue, which was that we have students here who do absolutely everything. You know, they're involved in co-curricular every single lunchtime, they're involved in co-curricular after school, they're here all the time. We also have students who don't do any at all. And an hour and 15 minutes is a very long time to be doing nothing if you are not doing a co-curricular activity. So we were having issues in terms of pupils getting themselves into mischief by having too long without any activities going on, where they were just left to their own devices. Now, I don't blame them for that, because quite frankly, if you gave me an hour and 20 minutes just to do whatever I wanted, I might find myself getting into mischief too. But the point is, we shouldn't have a system which enables that to take place. So we have deliberately moved to this new structure. I don't know how well you can see this. The reality is our start time and finish time are practically the same, but we will go straight into lessons period 1 and 2. We'll have a break, period 3 and 4, lunchtime, which will be 55 minutes, and then they'll go to afternoon registration before having either an assembly or a tutor period or games, depending on the day. Period 5, which will end at 3:30, and then there are 2 co-curricular slots. One is at 3:30 to 4:20, and one is at 4:30 to 5:25, with then the buses leaving at 5:35. There will be a requirement for every single student to stay here until the end of co-curricular 1, and everyone will have to pick a co-curricular 1 activity every day of the week. And that way we can make sure that everybody is doing some co-curricular, because at the moment that isn't necessarily true. And the reality is, that's what we do, so why wouldn't you take advantage of it? We will be encouraging people to go to as many co-curricular 2s as possible, and that it will be normal practice to leave the school at 5:30, having had a lot of co-curricular, awesome supervised and structured study, which is supported to enable people to do their prep when they want it. But if you want to pick them up at 4:20 in an evening, you can, but don't come before then because they're going to be busy doing something else. We're also putting some stipulations in place, which is that they will be required to choose something which is physical as part of their co-curricular activities, and they will be expected to pick something which is cultural or creative as part of their co-curricular activities. And the reason for that is that we know we have students who would quite like to have a go at something which is different to what they normally do, but they don't necessarily do it because they're a bit concerned about what their friends will think or what the reality will be, whereas we're going to make them try something new. My view is really, really clear. If you don't try it when you're at school, you don't try it. How many of us have said we're going to do something new and actually don't get round to it? How many of us continue really to do the things that we did when we were at school? There's been some anxiety about the length of lunch and whether we can get everyone through lunch, and we can, but I will talk to you a little bit more about how we're going to achieve that in a moment. So, as well as making sure that we've got our structures in place, we've also been working hard to look at the quality of teaching and learning that's going on within the school. So one of the things that Steve has done this year since he joined us in October is he and the rest of us on the senior team have gone into classes, have gone into lessons, and we have looked at them, we rated them to see whether they were as we wanted them to be. We've spoken to students, we've checked books, we've had lots of discussions, and we have identified those people within the school who we are very confident in their delivery, those people where there are areas that they need to improve, and those people where we want to work with them. We have systems in place now to ensure that we can do that, because the whole point is that you should be confident that it doesn't matter which teacher you get for a child in a subject, that they are going to get an excellent experience in that lesson. And if they aren't, we are doing something wrong. So we've been working on that, and we've been continuing to make sure it happens. That will continue. It isn't the most comfortable for teachers who are used to having a room and shutting the door and not being used to people being in there. So that's something that we are having to learn as a community. But there is a real desire by all of our teachers to make sure that they are able to deliver the best possible teaching and learning all of the time, which is what we want for your children. And you will have seen, I think, some information recently around feedback. And I've even heard some comments that, we don't do marking and quizzes anymore. That's not true. We give feedback. Feedback is a way of marking, but you've probably seen the green and the purple pens. One of the things that we discovered as part of our looking at what was going on in lessons was that when you look at books, that there were some teachers who marked a huge amount. In fact, there were certain teachers where we looked at their books and there was more writing in the book by the teacher than there was writing in the book by the child. And then there were other teachers who didn't do so much. But what was consistent between all of the books that we looked at, and we looked at a lot over the course of the couple of weeks that we did this exercise, was that very rarely did we require our students to actually do anything about what we said. So we might have said, you need to improve this, but then we didn't check that anything had happened. So we've now moved to a system where we use green pens to write our feedback, and we expect our student body to respond in a purple pen. So when you see purple pen colour in their books, that's what they've done in response to what we've asked them to do. Because the way in which you ensure that progress is made, and the way in which you ensure that they are actually learning, is that they act upon the advice you give. If you're giving advice and they don't take any notice of it, then as you all know, you don't really get very far. So that's really what we're trying to achieve. All the pictures. And just one thing that I wanted to mention here, just generally really, about our some of the things that are going on. There are two areas that I wanted to touch upon. One is sport and one is dance. What I wanted to say really about sport is that many of you will be aware that we are losing our director of sport, Simon Copeland, this year. And we have made a very deliberate decision that it is really difficult in a school of this size with the number of PE teachers that we are able to have for the number of students that we've got. It's really difficult for one person to be able to ensure that equal weight is given to all the sports and equal weight is given to boys and the girls' sport. So one of the things that we have made a decision of is instead of having a single director of sport, it is our intention, in fact we've already made the appointments, to have a director of girls' sport who will be Liz Hawes and a director of boys' sport who will be Philip Mann. That will ensure that we have got good provision and good cover across the different areas. We actually on our senior team have our previous director of sport anyway, because Andy Freed had that role even though he doesn't like the name. And so in terms of the strategic direction and development of sport, we have that input into the senior team anyway. We have recently made an appointment of a new young PE teacher who will have responsibility for hockey. He is a young, highly dynamic, extremely good coach who is playing at the highest level himself. So that is something that we're looking forward to introducing you to in September. And I'm also conscious of the fact that we have some issues surrounding dance at the moment and the Dance Academy, and I just wanted to clarify one or two things where that was concerned. The Dance Academy is not actually part of the Queen's College School. It is part of our enterprise company at the moment. And for a variety of reasons, many of them legal, we have made the decision that we want to remove it from being part of the enterprise company and bring it into the school properly, into the college. In the same way as the Cricket Academy is, in the same way that the Hockey Academy is. The downside of that from the perspective of other people is that if it's part of the Queen's College, then we are only able to accept students into the Dance Academy who are Queen's students. The advantage from your perspective is if you are the parent of somebody who loves dance, that our entire focus on dance is on our own Queen's students and on our scholars. So the provision will ensure that we can retain what we've always wanted to do in dance, ensure that we can develop it within the school, but that it will only be open to Queen's students from this point on. Okay, so I now wanted to move on to personnel. And as you know, we have had a number of changes that have been going on over the course of the last year. And I wanted to provide you with some information surrounding that. So, as a result of the work that I needed to do over the summer last year to look at what we were currently doing and what we were delivering, and because of the change to 1 hour lessons and a 2-week timetable, that meant that we were going to have some differences in allocation of teachers. So it really gave me a point where I needed to really look very carefully at our staffing and at how that looked. At this moment in time in this school, we have, for every 7 students, 1 teacher. So we have a 7-to-1 ratio. Now, the sector average is 12-to-1, and the missed target is 11-to-1. So we at the moment have a very large number of staff. When I did the analysis, it became quite clear why that was, because actually I had within the senior school probably 8 full-time members of staff I couldn't actually give any teaching to next year. And therefore, I needed to make some decisions about what I was going to do. I either spend £500,000 on paying people who I haven't actually got a job for, or I do something about it. Fortunately for us, we were able, through natural wastage and people deciding that it was time to leave or to retire, to be able to deal with a number of those. But there was a need for us to go through a redundancy process in 3 subjects, and it was important that we got that right. We did that in an incredibly fair and transparent system. And my only regret is that you found out through chatter from your children who have been told things that they shouldn't have been told. And I would like to apologise for that, because it should never have happened. And it is something that has made probably your life's difficult, and certainly hasn't helped me. However, the decisions that we made, the reason we done it in the way that we did it, was entirely above board and transparent. I wasn't able to give you information beforehand. The reality is, we are a charity, and we have a responsibility to use our charitable funds carefully, and we have a responsibility to use them responsibly. And it isn't responsible for me to use the money that you give me in order to employ teachers that I can't use. So therefore, we are always going to have to look at this. What had happened actually over the last 15 years is that we had an increase in teachers by 10 teachers with no increase in students. And that increase was as a result of us appointing new teachers when subjects became popular and the group sizes went up. But if you don't have any more students, then what that means is that the group sizes are diminishing on the other side. So the children are coming from somewhere. So what we didn't do is to redress the balance as we went along. We're now in a really much better position. We're in a position where we will be able to do this gradually as a gentle restructure as opposed to something we have to do in one go. But to reassure you, our ratio of staff to pupils and teaching staff to pupils across the college next year will be 8 to 1. So we are still a very long way away from what is normal within the sector. We also now have some very robust systems in place to monitor the capability of teachers and also disciplinary procedures if something goes wrong. And we always hope that that won't happen, but we can't guarantee it. And we always hope that a teacher who is not doing a great job in terms of the provision they provide for your child, that we would be in a position to support them and help them and train them so that they work. We have fantastic staff and we want to make sure that we retain them. But the reality is that you deserve your children to be taught by the best teachers. This school requires us to have people who are excellent practitioners, and if someone isn't, then we will need to go through a process in order to make sure that we either get them to the point where they are, or we deal with that. And really what I wanted to say was two things. If you ever feel that your child is not getting a good experience in a subject, please tell us, because we have the processes and we should do something about it. As I said before, it shouldn't matter which lesson, which teacher you have in a given subject, you should feel confident that they're going to get a grade in. But equally, if ever something happens that you are unhappy with in terms of the way your child is treated, then you should tell us, because we will investigate and we will do something about it. And there may be occasions when I am not able to tell you why somebody has left the school, but there will be a very good reason for this. Okay, financial security. And so, I wanted to give you some information about this. We are aware that there are rumours flying around. In fairness, there are always rumours flying around Taunton, but we are aware of them. And I thought it would probably be helpful for you to have some information that you are able to use. So, because we are part of NIST, Methodist Independent Schools Trust, they have certain requirements of us financially. In order for us to be part of the group, which we are, we have to reach the targets that they put in place. And their targets are that as an institution, we need to be making a 5% surplus each year, and we need to have 10% funds in a general reserve, which is there for a rainy day, in case something happens. That's what we are required to have. It's quite unusual within an independent school to have those sorts of targets in place, and indeed none of the other schools locally are under those same sort of stipulations, but we are. When I took over in July of 2016, at that point we had a deficit of 5%. And we have worked really hard over the last 3 years, making sure that we are careful about how we spend our money, making sure that we think about what we're doing, making sure that we pulled everything together to get us into a better financial position and a stronger financial position. I would like to just mention Andy Stevenson, who's sitting over here, who is our bursar, because one of the first things that we did when I took over and I looked at our financial situation, which I did know before I took the job, but I only just knew because I hadn't been aware of it until a couple of weeks beforehand, was that I needed a really good bursar. I needed someone who had an attention to detail, who was able to really manage the finances, and so we appointed Andy. We also are very fortunate to have a couple of extremely strong financial governors in Mike Goff and David Saville, who have worked tirelessly with me over the last 3 years in order to ensure that we were able to move things in the direction we wanted to. And we're now in a much different position, and I think it's something that I really want you to take away from today. We have looked at our 5-year forecast moving forward. We've looked at it even assuming that we don't have the number of students that we currently have. Although I don't see any reason why we won't have the number of students that we currently have, but even without that, we will really immediately, certainly as of next year, meet both of those targets. So we have moved from a 5% deficit to a 5% surplus in 3 and a bit years. That's taken a lot of time and a lot of effort and a lot of really hard work on behalf of our finance team and our governors. But it has now put us in an incredibly strong position. And I'm not going to make any observations about any other schools, but what I will say is this, that we are really fortunate in a sense, because those targets are in place by this, because they require that of us, it forces us to operate at a higher standard than we would otherwise need to. There are very few schools that make a 5% surplus every year. This isn't normal amongst independent schools. It's what we have to do, it's what we will do, it's what we are doing. And so I wanted to be able to give you some reassurance where that was concerned. It hasn't been without its difficult decisions, but actually some of those decisions haven't been that hard. It isn't that hard to say, we won't travel, I won't travel anything other than second class when I go on the train. It isn't hard for me to say, we will not have large amounts of complimentary wine available every time we do something. Those things are not difficult. We are a school. It is important that your money goes on ensuring that the provision that your children have is the best possible provision, not on making sure that I can travel in luxury. I don't need to do that. Lots of things been going on within the site, but I wanted to alert you to the things that are our priorities moving forward, and also give you a little bit of information really. So the first thing that I wanted to say to you is, contrary to popular belief, the cafe has not shut in order to become a classroom. The cafe has shut in order for us to refurbish it over the course of the year, because in order to get everybody through lunch more rapidly, we are going to need to reduce the number of people going through the dining room. So what is now the cafe will become the dining room and the dining area for sixth formers, and then go there for their lunch. In addition to that, it will be open every weekend when we have fixtures. It will be the place where team teas happen. It will be the place where parents' teas happen. It will be the place where you'll be able to go and have a nice cup of tea. We've been working hard on it, and the work is still ongoing. If you want to see what the work is going to look like a little bit, there's a board outside which you will see, which has got the sort of artist's impression on it. And you'll see that it says that it's been designed by our art department, because I have requested 2 members of our art department, Laura Gowen and Bex Kane, that they actually provide us with the artwork themselves for that particular area. We're changing its name. It will not be called the cafe. It will be called the Dining Pavilion, and it will be available for all events and all activities moving forward. So that's one of the areas that we are developing over the course of this summer, and we will be ready to go in September. We've also done a variety of pieces of work, so we've reinstated the engineering into the DT department and set that back up. We had lost DT in the workshop, and we put that back in because we believe that engineering is a really important for the future of our country, and therefore really important that our young people have an opportunity to experience it. We are hoping to be able to further develop it in time so that we can, as well as have a woodwork area, have a metal work area, which is really unusual in schools these days, so that we can really start to develop engineering more fully than we currently do. So that's been going on. We've had all the lighting changed. You might have noticed that it's not quite as dim as it was, and that is for two purposes. One is in order to be more environmentally friendly, and one to improve the quality of the lighting across the whole of the college. So that's an area that we've been working on. We're working over the summer on making sure that the spaces are in place for the year groups. So year groups will have spaces together. Year 7 will have one space, Year 8 will have a space, Year 9 will have a space. We're using the existing house structures, but we are organising them differently. So an awful lot of work's gone into that. The students have been involved in the decision making about what they want, and this group of people who are heavily involved in it have looked at how to make it work. So that's what been taking place. We've got a big investment programme which we are looking at over the next 12 months to 2 years, which is to improve our IT infrastructure so that we can really start to look at our use of technology across the college. At the moment, I'm afraid I think that if we were to rely on all of us collectively in school together, the whole system might fall apart, and we would like to get to a system where that isn't the case. So we will be having big investment in that area. So it is our intention to continue to develop the site and to develop it in the existing spaces and to look at what that looks like. But there are some big areas that you will probably be aware of. So you might ask me the question, which is, why are you selling the chaplain's house and the plot of land next to it? Well, we are selling those areas, which we are doing on the side, in order to shore up the perimeter of the school. At the moment, we have a situation where next to the chaplain's house is a derelict property, and that's very difficult for us to manage in terms of the periphery of the school. We don't need that space, and therefore we are selling those two areas in order for us to be able to fence on, and that to become someone else's issue to deal with. We're not selling the chaplain's property because we aren't going to have a chaplain, or because the chaplain isn't going to have somewhere to live. At the moment, he is living somewhere. He is living off site at the moment in a property that we have provided for him, but as soon as we find the right property on the school site, then he will move back onto the site. We're looking for that. Some of you might say, well, why is it that you're selling Shaw Meadow? Because you were aware that is happening as well. The answer to that question is simple. That piece of land was originally bought in order to have games fields there. We have since acquired the land behind the sixth form centre, which gives us the additional area for games to take place. And the reality is, there is absolutely no way that I would get through my DSL walking groups of students from here to a field in Truro and to go and play sport. So therefore, there is no point just keeping hold of that particular piece of land. You might say to me, why is it that you don't give it to the local community? And the answer will be because we're not allowed to legally under the Charity Commission rules, and we're not able to give away land. We have to dispose of it in the right way, which is what we are doing. You will know, because I sent you a letter recently to tell you about our plans with regard to Channon, and you might say to me, well, what's happening there? The reality of Channon is that we have for a very long time had anxieties about the position of Channon for a boarding house. It is almost a mile away from school. There are no footpaths once you get onto Wilder Lane, and I have a vivid recollection from 2 years ago when 2 young people were killed outside Taunton School in Russell Road. I don't want that to happen here. I don't want us to be in that position. And so we've made a decision that it is right for us to bring our boarding community back onto the school site and to retain them here. That's good for them in terms of integration, but it's also much safer. And that was compounded by the fact that we did a survey of our students just before Christmas. And the one area that came up consistently amongst the boarders in Channon as a place that they did not feel safe was Wardo Lane. And so if I needed a reason to say that we couldn't keep boarding there, that was it. We're not having any fewer boarders. We've got space within the main school site to bring the boarders in. We have areas in Schoolhouse that have not actually yet been developed, where we want accommodation of but where it exists at the moment. And so it will be our intention to find those spaces on the site over the course of the next year in order to bring the borders onto the school community. We have not yet made any definitive decisions about what we're going to do with the Challen site, and we are in discussions over a variety of things. It could be that we decide to sell that particular plot of land, or it could be that Jane, who's been working very hard on trying to find other alternatives, managed to do what one of the things she is employed to do, which is to get a liaison and an arrangement with someone so that they can lease the building in order to use it for something else, or can work with us on using it for something else. One of the things that we are in discussions about very early at the moment is it being set up as a teacher training college to help provide good quality teachers both for here and for other schools, either in the group or overseas. But it's early days. So I'm very close to finishing, but I did want to give you a couple of additional pieces of information which you, I think, may find useful. The first is that we are really conscious of the fact that this is probably the first time that you've been able to sit here and listen to what we're doing, how we're doing it, why we're doing it. And there's a variety of reasons for that. You know, we have, in a sense, affected 20 years of change in 3 years. We are really conscious of that, and it has been very full on for everybody concerned. And if you were to say to me, as I was asked a couple of weeks ago, which was, does this mean you've done it now and we're not going to have any changes from this point on? The answer to that is absolutely not, because otherwise we'll just end up in the same place that we were before. But I am hoping that those changes from now on will be more of an evolution and less of a revolution, which is sort of sometimes how it feels at this moment in time. But we are conscious that our communication could be better, and so I have been working recently both with the staff but also with a focus group of parents on what we should be communicating, where we should be communicating it, and how we should be communicating it in order to try and get our messages out in a clearer, better way. And we are really conscious of the fact that there's probably two areas that we want information on. One is this, the big picture stuff, what's going on, and the other one is my child in pre-teen tomorrow? And we know that, and we know that there are all sorts of complications associated with both of those. So we are trying to put in place some processes that will help from September. I am intending to put a questionnaire out to all parents in the next couple of weeks just to ask you for yes/no answers on a variety of things, specifically with regard to communication, to help us build a system which works more effectively for September. I also wanted just to raise another point. Sitting at the back of the room is Mark Edwards, who is our Chair of Governance. He has been absolutely unfailing and relentless in his pursuit of what is right for this school, and he has worked incredibly hard. In fact, at one point, I thought I needed to put a bedroom for him somewhere because I think he was spending more time here than he was at home. But that and our contribution to the MIST group has been recognised in Mark being invited to become a trustee on the board of MIST. That's a really important moment for us as a school because it means now for the first time ever we are in a position where we have somebody who is involved from our school who is actually involved in the decision making for the group as a whole. And it's a real testimony to the work that's been going on here and the work that he has done that they have requested his involvement in at that level. So that will really help us moving forward.